hospital in Ohio. And while I was doing that work, I learned a couple of things. The first thing was that I did not want to become an ordained minister, which was important. And then the second thing was that I really, really wanted to write a story that was about the kinds of sick kids I was meeting at the hospital, which is to say that I was not meeting kids who were tragic cases. I was meeting kids, thank you, Elise, who were humans, and who were quite a lot like any of the other teenagers that I hang out with. That sounded creepy. So the image of the person suffering from cancer, not just children, but particularly children, is that they are these sad, wise-eyed creatures who know the secret to the meaning of life because they've been forced to stare deeply into the abyss, and they've come back and they have some kind of knowledge that is not available to the rest of us. Well, that's not true. And I wanted to write a story that was really, really funny in the same way that the kids I knew were really, really funny, and that found a way to be unsentimental in the way that the kids I knew were unsentimental, and angry in the way that they were angry, and that wouldn't, like all of the kids that I knew who had cancer were super conscious of the cancer kid cliches, and while, some of them applied, others of them didn't, and they, that tension was always really interesting to me. But for the first 8 years that I tried to write this story, I failed miserably, partly because there was this dashingly handsome hospital chaplain character in all of my stories, who was also an alcoholic and was like trying to manage his drinking while also seducing this gorgeous young doctor. It was like a terrible Grey's Anatomy. And I wasn't able to really find a way into the story until I met Esther Earle, a young nerd fighter and reader of my books who had terminal cancer. And when I met her, although I didn't know it at the time, and then over the course of the next 3 years, I grew to know her and be very good friends with her and be close to a lot of her closest friends in our community. And it wasn't so much Esther's illness that was an inspiration to me, it was Esther's empathy. I think what I needed was to meet an empathetic teenager. I say that lovingly. I was not an empathetic teenager. It's very, very difficult to imagine what it's like to be other people, but it's particularly difficult when you are only beginning to understand and imagine what it's like to be yourself. And in Esther, I met a really empathetic teenager, and I also met someone who did not take to any of the cliches of young cancer survivors, including, by the way, the phrase cancer survivor. Esther's empathy and her sense of humor and her fear and all of that became very close to me because she and I were close to each other. I want to make it very clear that Hazel, the girl in the book, is not Esther, and I want to make that particularly clear since Esther is not here to defend herself against horrible accusations like that she enjoys America's Next Top Model. But there is no way that I ever could have written this story without Esther, and her legacy is so strong in our community, and that's one of the reasons that tonight you can donate to The Star Won't Go Out, and up to $500 your donations will be matched by Hank and myself. And you guys have a lot to live up to because in New York and Boston they raised more than $2,400. So, no pressure.